How did two best friends, who swore to share everything equally, end up drowning an entire empire in blood and then each other? This story began with an alliance forged not by honor, but by a desperate thirst for gold. Francisco Pizarro and Diego de Almagro were both illegitimate, illiterate veterans of the New World, where life held little value. They had no noble lineage, no promising future, only rumors of a fabled land of riches to the south, the mythical Peru. They gambled everything they had, striking a deal. Pizarro would lead a handful of soldiers into the unknown, while the one-eyed Almagro would handle supplies. They swore to share future spoils, cities, lands, gold, like brothers. Little did they know they would have to divide not just treasures, but power. And in that game there could only be one winner. Francisco Pizarro saw himself as that victor. Born a nobody, the illegitimate son of a colonel, legend has it, he was suckled by a sow after his birth mother abandoned him. He never learned to read, signing his name with an X until his dying day. Yet this humiliating detail became his strength. While others studied contracts, he studied people, their fears, their greed, their weaknesses. Spain had cast him out. In the old world, a servant's son could never become a master. So he decided, if rules were made to humiliate him, he would live without them. The New World was the only place where he could carve out a new biography with a sword. Pizarro didn't go there for gold. He went for status, for the right to trample those who had once looked down on him. Spain at the time was a powder keg. 7 centuries of the Reconquista, the war against the Moors, had ended. The country was flooded with thousands of hidalgos, impoverished but proud nobles who knew only one thing: how to kill. Then Columbus opened an entire continent to them, a new war, a new crusade, but this time not for faith, but for yellow metal. The crown quickly realized how to capitalize. It issued licenses for plunder without investing a single peso. Conquistadors sought investors themselves, buying their own ships and weapons. In return, the king received 1/5 of all spoils, pure profit from others' blood. This was not an era of discovery. It was the largest and most brutal gold rush in history, where thousands of desperate men gambled their lives. The winner took all. The losers were consumed by the jungle or their own comrades, and Pizarro proved time and again that he wouldn't lose. When his starving men mutinied on Gallo Island, ready to return empty-handed, he simply drew a line in the sand with his sword. To the south, Peru and mountains of gold. To the north, Panama and poverty. Choose. Only 13 men stepped across. With this tiny band, he invaded an empire of 10 million. His army, 168 soldiers. The Inca army, 80,000 warriors. Then he did what no one else would dare. He invited Emperor Atahualpa to peace talks in Cajamarca, while secretly hiding his men in ambush. When the unarmed Inca retinue filled the square, Pizarro gave the signal. Within hours, he slaughtered thousands of courtiers and captured a living god. The empire was decapitated with one swift blow. But this was no miracle. It was a technology of deception, honed to perfection by Pizarro. He possessed no hypnotic charisma. He had something better, an X-ray vision for human avarice. He didn't recruit soldiers, he created shareholders for the riskiest venture in the world. His team wasn't composed of the best warriors, but the most desperate, bankrupts, fugitives, bastards, all those the old world had left no chance. To each, he sold not just a share of the spoils, but a personal ticket to a new life, a life where yesterday's swineherd became a master. He didn't promise them easy money, he promised them the right to take by force what had never belonged to them. And this intoxicating temptation proved stronger than the fear of death. Pizarro turned others' desperation into his personal weapon. However, this wasn't a private venture. Shadows stood behind Pizarro's every step. His financial director was Father Hernando de Luque, a front for the true investors, Panama's wealthiest officials. They provided funds, receiving in return a share in an as-yet unconquered empire. It was a venture investment where dividends were paid in blood. This scheme had a powerful enemy, Governor Pedro de los Rios of Panama, who considered Pizarro a dangerous adventurer. It was he who sent ships to retrieve the starving soldiers from Gallo Island and halt the suicidal expedition. To him, Pizarro was not an explorer but a gang leader threatening the colony's stability. A war began, not of swords but of denunciations and bribes. The governor sought to legally destroy the expedition, but Pizarro's patrons proved shrewder. They helped him bypass the ban and go directly to Spain, to the king himself. Pizarro understood the crucial point. To conquer a continent, he first had to win the intrigues at court, and he won. In the throne room of Spanish King Charles V, the illiterate bastard received everything he dreamed of: the title of governor, rights to the best lands of Peru, and a huge salary. But there, at the zenith of his triumph, he made a fatal mistake. He betrayed the only man to whom he had sworn loyalty. The royal decrees he brought back from Spain contained no place for Diego de Almagro. Pizarro secured major posts and future estates for himself and his brothers. For his partner, the one-eyed veteran who had invested his entire fortune in their shared enterprise, he left only a tiny, impoverished fortress. This was not merely betrayal, it was public humiliation. When Almagro saw the documents, their alliance crumbled. The conquest of Peru hadn't even begun, but civil war among the conquistadors was already inevitable. Pizarro had decapitated the Inca Empire, but now he had created an enemy who would one day decapitate his own. Almagro seethed with rage. He arrived in Peru with fresh troops, just as Pizarro brought the royal decrees. Instead of the promised half of the empire, he received a humiliating pittance. Conflict erupted instantly. The two camps were ready to tear each other's throats out without having shared a single gold ingot. But Pizarro was a pragmatist. He understood that civil war now would be suicide. He needed Almagro's soldiers, so he proposed a new deal. He swore he would secure a governorship for his partner in the southern lands in unconquered Chile. For now, they would share the current spoils. With a heavy heart, Almagro agreed. They publicly embraced to calm their soldiers, but it was merely a facade. Their alliance now rested not on friendship, but on deferred hatred and the anticipation of Atahualpa's ransom, the greatest treasure in history. When assassins sent by Almagro's son stormed his palace, Francisco Pizarro was an old man. He had received everything he dreamed of: titles, lands, limitless power. Yet he was ultimately stabbed to death on his own floor, like a common soldier. What remained after him? Not laws, not a dynasty. His viceroyalty immediately plunged into the civil war he himself had started. The gold ripped from the heart of Peru flowed into the king's treasury, paying for others' wars. Nothing material remained of him. But he left something greater, a legend, a terrible and alluring story of an illiterate bastard bringing an entire civilization to its knees. He proved that history isn't what's written in books, it's what's carved with a sword on the world map. A man who couldn't sign his name etched it into eternity, and in this lies his main brutal triumph.